CDC Research on Gun Violence by Jessica Brandenburg. Mass shooting gun violence is an ongoing problem in this country. While it does not account for the majority of gun violence deaths and injuries, where the shootings occur have the public concerned. The shootings have occurred in movie theaters and at concerts and schools, workplaces, just out in the general public, restaurants. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have gun violence listed as one of the top reasons for death on their website, based on data from 2015. And the main political topic right now is what to do in response to the most recent mass shootings, due to the introduction of social media and the 24-hour news cycle, and our current political climate. These shootings are more prevalent than ever, or at least that's what it appears like in the public's eye. In reality, they're actually pretty steady. There's not really been an increase in the number of shootings. This is a mass shooting map from 2015. It's based on data provided by the Gun Violence Archive, and they collect data on gun violence, both individual, isolated events and mass shootings. And the current policy situation is that the CDC used to research gun violence and offer recommendations to the public, just like they would with any other health issue, which the CDC does consider gun violence to be a public health issue. However, in the 1990s, the Dickey Amendment was created to prevent the CDC from using its funding to promote any type of gun control, so they could continue to research gun violence. However, they were not allowed to use that research to promote any type of gun control or what the government deemed to be gun control. Due to those limitations with research, the funding was earmarked and appropriated for other projects, and what little money was left wasn't really adequate for researching gun violence, and a lot of scientists stayed away from it due to the limitations set on the topic. The latest spending bill that was passed has given the CDC permission to research gun violence, but it does not void the Dickey Amendment, so the funding limitations are still there. And the scientists at the CDC can research the issue, but not offer any recommendations to the public that might appear to be gun control. And their hands are effectively tied at the moment on the topic due to all the limitations. Alternatives to the current policy would be to take action to remove the limitations put on the CDC by the Dickey Amendment. This would allow them, the scientists, to research the sources of gun violence and offer recommendations to the public on ways that it can be prevented or avoided or stopped. Another alternative would be to give the CDC permission to research mass shooting gun violence only, or alone. Not to research all gun violence, but specifically mass shooting gun violence. This would allow the CDC to research the issue, and it would be seen as taking action on the topic in the eyes of the public. Finally, another alternative would be to revoke permission to study gun violence, period, which would be to remove the topic from the CDC's approved list of topics to research, and would definitely prevent the CDC from advocating on gun violence and ways to stop it. My recommendation would be to allow the CDC to promote, or allow the CDC to research gun violence in the case of mass shootings. This would appease both the voting public, who want the legislative bodies to take action, and those who want their Second Amendment rights protected. And the CDC can research the wide variety of incidents that have occurred over the decades and provide information on the various causes of these tragedies. And the public would also see this as, of course, taking action on the issue, especially with the younger generation that is coming up who has had to live with these mass shootings occurring every year in schools, and what strong advocates they've become recently on this topic. As far as implementing, the first step of implementation is the need for the policy to be very specific and clear on what the CDC can and cannot research and do with that research. It's very important to alleviate any kind of confusion for the CDC and the scientists, and prevent any misuse of funding or information. After the policy is written, the CDC can proceed with researching mass shooting gun violence. They will need additional funding due to the fact that their current funding has already been assigned to other issues, and they will also need more staffing because, of course, their current staff are dedicated to other topics, and they will need experts in the field. The CDC will need to gather data from mass shooting incidents from around the country in order to study the issue properly. And according to multiple sources, a mass shooting is where 4 people, not including the suspect, the person shooting, have been shot and either injured or killed. And this typically takes place in a public area, a restaurant, a theater, a park, a concert, a school, an office building. And the CDC will need to compile the data for each incident and look at other evidence that is associated with the shootings, including manifestos and other evidence left by the shooters, and if the shooters survived, the CDC would need to conduct interviews or read interviews that have been conducted if they are not allowed access to the shooter. Then the CDC would take the research and make recommendations on how to reduce the number of mass shootings. They would create a campaign based on their recommendation to alert and educate the public, and the CDC would need access to the data, additional funding, additional staffing, and the cooperation of various law enforcement agencies that have dealt with the various shooters and shooting incidents. As far as analysis, the CDC needs to conduct thorough research into the cause or causes of mass shootings in public places. From the research, they need to determine if anything can be done to stop the mass shootings, prevent or lessen the mass shootings. Then the CDC would present its findings to the public. Potentially, they would also be asked to present their findings to a committee in Congress before presenting to the public. And the measure would be finding a cause or causes behind the mass shooting. That's the main goal. It might very well be the CDC cannot determine one or a few causes behind the issue. The CDC would be looking at a wide variety of mass shootings in order to determine the cause, as far as if the analysis would work. Due to the variety of these shootings, it's possible that there are a multitude of reasons behind the shootings, and that the CDC will not be able to make any recommendations or determinations because there are too many reasons, too many causes. There's the potential that there's not one single cause or a handful of causes. And then, however, if there are several causes based on types of mass shootings, workplace, schools, public venues, then it's possible that the CDC will be able to make situational recommendations based on the different types of incidents. As far as opposition to this policy change, Second Amendment rights advocates will more than likely oppose the CDC doing research on any type of gun violence. It is important to stress the limitations that the CDC will be under as far as what type of gun violence they're allowed to research and why they are researching this particular type of gun violence, and an emphasis placed on the benefit to the entire country in its effort to save lives and prevent mass shootings. Politically, this is a major topic for both gun control advocates and those who want to protect their Second Amendment rights. The next group of eligible voters, those who are going to be turning 18 before the next election, feel very strongly about this, specifically those who are speaking to news outlets and getting their message across and leading walkouts and various other forms of activism on this topic. And by taking this action, you will have made some effort to work to prevent mass shootings, and this will appease the public on both sides as being seen as taking action but not endangering an individual's Second Amendment rights. However, it is a political fight uphill due to resistance for any type of action that could be deemed as gun control. And then these are all of the sources.